Hey, all, and welcome to the Trillium Show. My name is Dr. Jason Hall, board-certified plastic surgeon in Knoxville, Tennessee. This show is designed to help you improve your mind, your body, and your life. Today, I've got the distinct pleasure of having an old friend, Danese Rexroad, on the show today. She is the Chief Clinical Officer at Ways to Well, based out of Austin and Houston, Texas. She is an expert in metabolic dysfunction of my age group, your age group, and works very closely with a number of people who you would recognize in terms of hormone replacement, metabolic optimization, and just life optimization. So, Danese, thanks for coming on. It's a pleasure. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about, all my favorite things.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, hormones are a hot topic now, and we'll get to the hormone stuff throughout this show. But America the healthcare system is broken. It doesn't work. It's a disease management system, not a true healthcare system. And you have been doing a lot of work with patients over the last number of years with optimizing people from a metabolic standpoint. And what are some of the problems? You treated over 90,000 patients. What are some of the most common problems that people are coming to you with?
I feel bad saying this, but it's the same thing all the time. I don't feel like myself. I want to feel better. I'm tired. I go to the doctor with all of these symptoms and they tell me that I'm normal. I fall within the normal range. And what I explain to people, I imagine a bell curve. And as long as you're within that in some capacity, you meet the standards of the American population. But no one's paying attention to your standards. How do you feel? What is different for you? And I think what we've come so far away from, and just in the medical establishment, and you and I were both trained allopathically, there's nothing curative. There's nothing approaching true individual personalized care. Like we just don't do that outside of functional medicine. If you have a symptom, if you get high blood pressure, you're going to get a high blood pressure medicine. That's not curative. It's just managing the symptom. Nobody's looking at why would your blood pressure be high? Why is your weight going up? Why are you tired? Why are you not sleeping? No one's asking the questions why. It's just, here's a symptom, here's a med, here's a symptom, here's a med. And now you're in the system of needing something refilled every month and chasing these disease processes. There's a sliding scale to where metabolic change happens and heart disease starts and type 2 diabetes. It's all connected. And then you start to have deterioration of your organs. That's where you have type 3 diabetes, where you get dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So the brain is affected, the heart is affected, the kidneys are affected, and the joints are affected, arthritis, all these things. It's just a cascade of problems. But nobody went back from the very beginning and said, why? And that's where we come in and say, okay, how are you feeling? I want to know, I ask all the questions about your health. What are your goals? And some people are like, I just want to feel good again. I want my skin to glow. I want to, be active with my kids. I want to lose 15 pounds. It varies from person to person. But the bigger thing is there a difference in the way you feel right now and the way you felt in your 20s? When I'm thinking about hormones, 20s and 30s. Back to the allopathic world of chasing the medications, I'm going to use something like cholesterol. When you start to lose testosterone, when you start to lose estrogen and progesterone, cholesterol will start to build up. Cholesterol is what I call a main ingredient that you need to make your hormones. And I make a joke, if we're going to bake a cake, we have to have some flour, sugar, eggs, milk, and butter. You also have to turn the oven on at 350 and bake the cake. That's where sleep comes in. I look at sleep like the oven, vitamin D, B vitamins, cholesterol, magnesium. You've got to make sure that you have all the ingredients to make your hormones. So when your hormone process starts to fade, cholesterol will creep up because cholesterol is a steroidal repairing hormone. It's trying to protect your body. So you go to the primary care doctor, it's time for my routine checkup. Oh, your cholesterol's high. I'm going to put you on a cholesterol reducing medication to just drop the number of cholesterol. Nobody asked. How's your exercise? How's your diet? How's your stress? How's your sleep? Let's get back to how are you doing? And let's look at why your cholesterol would be elevated. Let's look at your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol level, thyroid level. Those hormones play a huge role in cholesterol, but we've demonized cholesterol as a problem. And so now we've got to get the cholesterol numbers down. So the cholesterol number looks pretty. Now we're losing muscle. Now we're losing bone. We've lost more testosterone. We've lost more energy. I'm very fatigued. I'm starting to forget things. Now we're going to chase some more symptoms. And now we've got this early diagnosis of dementia. Now we've got sarcopenia from muscle wasting. And now you're just in this, I call it the hamster wheel effect. You're just stuck in the system. And I had enough about 10 years ago. And I was like, I feel like I'm not helping people. I'm just writing these prescriptions and they're coming in for blood pressure medicine and nobody asked why. This young person has high blood pressure. And so I wanted to look at why. I'm asking the questions, I'm deep diving. I wanted to break that hamster wheel and start targeting root cause disease. So that, that's one of the things I did was I went back and I'm board certified in functional medicine. And that's the whole preface is the root cause of the disease. So, there's many aspects of it. If you're not sleeping, you're going to have some mental health changes. You're going to have some fatigue throughout the day. You're going to have muscle wasting because you're having that dedicated time to repair and build. Progesterone in women affects our sleep. So I kind of make a joke. If your girlfriend or your wife is a little grumpy, she probably needs more sleep, or she probably needs some progesterone, or probably a snack. It's not just here's an antidepressant. There's something else. So with men, I was talking about earlier about how women, our hormones kind of fall off of a cliff. We will cruise along, everything is fine, and then all of a sudden, big changes happen. It's very fast, and I have watched lab levels, I see patients regularly. I've watched lab levels just fall. Men, a little different. It's just kind of a slow and steady loss of testosterone. Men go through andropause just like women go through menopause. But for the men, it's just a little slower, and you kind of get into a rut, into a routine. And just a little tired, and the next day is just a little bit more. And then before you know it, got a little belly fat, and maybe a little cholesterol changes, and just maybe a little less volume in the muscle. And I pay attention to muscle because I look at muscle as long-term health. We know there's a direct association between muscle preservation and long-term health. So I pay attention to muscle preservation a lot. As we age, we lose it, quite rapidly. And then we just kind of, oh, this is how it is. That's how it's supposed to be when you're in your 40s. I'm like, I don't want to be that way. I want to die young as late as possible. I want to be the 85-year-old in the gym having sex whenever I want to. That's where I want to. That's how I want my health span to be. And back to the allopathic side of it, there's a big difference, a chasmic difference between lifespan and health span. And in the allopathic world, it's just lifespan. How long can I keep you around? How many years can I give you? And I'm on the side of how many years of life can I give you? Life. I want the fun things.
Yeah. That and I think that was in some of our other conversations. That has been my own transition to really looking at more of things from a functional medicine side. Is that if I live to 90, but the last 30 years of my life, I can't do the things that I can't play with my kids. I can't play with my grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm too weak to carry luggage out of the house on a trip.
Yep.
I can't go hiking or skiing or, whatever I want to do. Is that really life anymore?
Right.
That has been probably one of my own shifts in this whole journey, is looking at this from a health span standpoint instead of a lifespan standpoint. And you talked about at one point, kind of talking about metabolic changes as like a three-legged stool. And I thought that analogy was really good. Could you explain that?
Yes. I look at blood sugar and insulin, cholesterol, and testosterone as a three-legged stool. So if each leg of the stool is doing its part, everything is nice and balanced. So if you go back to when you were in your teens and 20s, you didn't have high cholesterol, didn't have metabolic changes. Testosterone was great. Sleep was great. You were invincible because everything was nice and balanced. As you age, and there is a little more to it than just hormone loss. Your environment will dictate the speed in which you lose your hormones. So I tell people who drink energy drinks and they don't sleep and they push their limits, they're going to lower their testosterone much faster than someone who doesn't practice good habits. But in general, if you're practicing good habits and you're doing everything, you're still going to have, as you age, you're going to have that loss of testosterone. Well, when testosterone starts to fade, the other two shift up. And I also make a joke about if you've ever watched The Lion King, when Simba goes away, when Scar comes in, that's kind of how I look at insulin. It wrecks everything. If you have insulin resistance, you hold on to all this inflammation, you're storing all of your fat, it affects your liver, it affects your brain. If there's a good balance, if you have that three-legged stool and nothing is wobbly and you're in a good place, metabolically speaking, you're going to correct a lot of the prior issues that happened from the imbalance. And I'm on the side now, let's not ever get there. So when I look at blood work, I'm looking at the difference between normal versus optimal. And optimal is where you should be. So if you're towing the line and hanging in right on the optimal range, and we're tracking this over a few years, and all of a sudden, flip, we've shifted. Okay, something happened. Welcome to perimenopause. Welcome to andropause. I make a joke. I'm your tour guide. We're going to make some adjustments. And sometimes it's a little supplement. Sometimes it's changing some lifestyle issues. And sometimes you need the hormonal support. With menopause, andropause, your body stops creating the hormones that you needed. Now, I'm going to take a deeper dive into this part of it because this is how I feel. It is happening much sooner for our generation than it did for our parents and grandparents. We used to hear about women going through the change when they were in their 60s. It's happening in our 40s now. And I do think it's because of our chemical exposures, our diet, our lifestyle, a lot of unnatural habits that have sped the process of disrupting our endocrine system. And so it's sped that process. And both men and women are experiencing that. And we've also had some changes in fertility rates, things like that. So we're watching that, studying that just in general as a society. But again, like we started talking about in the beginning, listening to the patient. Let's go back to where were you? How did you feel when you were in your 20s and 30s? I'm not going to turn back the clock. I'm not going to get you back there all the way. But can we go back to the part where you didn't have metabolic changes, where you didn't have sleep changes, where you weren't struggling with belly fat and erection quality and muscle development and mood and all the things, both men and women, we pay attention to those values earlier versus I used to hear, and I remember this, I remember learning in school. On their 60th birthday, they're going to need a mammogram, they're going to need this and this and this because they've reached the age. And now I'm like, we've reached the age by the calendar, but there's a huge, huge swing in health between a 60-year-old and a 35-year-old. Why aren't we doing some early detection then? Why aren't we paying attention much earlier? That's true detection versus, hey, I'm going to find it because it's your birthday. So that little bit of a shift in the allopathic world, I think, is coming too.
I think time is something, you mentioned something earlier. Time is something that I think is worth talking about because in American society, certainly in allopathic medicine, we've been conditioned to want the quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
You come in, I'll take my own example. You go to the doctor, you get blood work, your A1C is creeping into the mid fives. You're starting to show signs. I was starting to show signs of insulin resistance. You've got high blood pressure. And everybody wants the quick fix, the pill that's going to fix the number.
Mm-hmm.
How long, when you're talking about treating metabolism, treating metabolic dysfunction, riding the three-legged stool, what kind of time frame can people expect these changes to take place?
For the most part, you're going to see some big changes over the first 3 months, over the first 12 weeks. Your hormones are going to you're going to be in a better balanced state. Sleep is going to be better. if you're making dietary changes and you're doing, I call it doing your homework, you're doing your homework, you're going to see some big changes over the next 12 weeks. But it takes a solid year before everything is where it's supposed to be. And I think if you remember, we did the first visit and then the second visit, and you're like, I feel it, I'm not there yet. And I think I told you, like, yeah, we're not going to be there yet because it took a lot longer to build up to that phase, looking at your hormonal changes over the years. And now we're going to slowly creep back up to need, meaning like where you feel your best, where your symptoms are completely managed. And that's my rule of thumb too. I treat to complete symptom resolution. So in general, at the first 12 weeks, you start to feel big changes, but it takes between that 9 and 12 months for everything to just settle in, and now you're solid. You're maintaining your muscle. Energy is great. With women, when I'm talking about women with this, I talk about libido, and I make it very uncomfortable on purpose because no one does that. When you go to the gynecologist, they don't ask, how's your sex life? You're enjoying your person? This is a part of mental health. This is a part of physical health, and it kind of gets taboo, and no one wants to talk about it. And I make it a forefront conversation on purpose and I tell people it's not because I want to know that aspect of your life. It's because it's telling me your hierarchy of needs. And at the tippy top, if you tell me, man, everything is great, I am chasing my husband around the house, this is wonderful, then that tells me the fundamental needs are being met. And so I use this as my goal for women. I use it as my goal for men. It's very different. That's a fundamental need on the base of the pyramid. It's a fundamental need at the top of the pyramid for us. And so I use that gauge, and men and women are different. And I also make jokes about the kitchen has to be clean and the stars have to be aligned. But those are what I'm joking about is just fundamental needs. And it doesn't necessarily mean the connection with your person. It means enough sleep, enough nutrition, enough hormonal balance. Everything has to be stacked up correctly. So I use that as a measurement tool and make it a little uncomfortable. But my favorite visit is that 12 weeks after, when I get oh, you were right. This is different. This is fun. And I have a physician as a patient, and he is in his 80s, and he's one of my favorite stories because his wife is still in her 70s. And when I first met with him, he was like, I don't know about testosterone. It causes cancer. And I was like, no, sir, it doesn't. Dr. Morgan Taylor debunked that. I gave him some studies, and he's a pretty famous doctor in this area. And so I was a little intimidated by, talking to him about this because I'm having to break that process. I'm having to break his confirmation bias. And so we talk, and he's like, okay, I'll give it a try. And I set both of them up, and they were just a little, we'll see. We want to be around for our grandchildren. The same thing we all want, better quality of life. She didn't want hip fractures, and he wanted to be around to take care of her. 3 months later, they wanted to meet me together, and they were tickling each other and giggling, and he leaned in, and he was like, Denise, had you told me that this was the reward I was going to get for improving my health, I would have done this years ago. And I'm wow. He's like, I waited until I was 80, and I'm getting the best years right now because he had all this energy, and they were connected on a completely different level. And it, they've been so fun. He's 87 now, and it's been great. They're great. No hip fractures. They're taking care of, they're traveling. They'll message me every, 6 or 8 months that they've been traveling the world. That's how it should be because they're healthy, and that's what I want for everyone.
Yeah, and that should be the goal. That should be the goal of allopathic medicine, and it isn't. The goals have shifted, and we can talk. Yeah, we can get into the conspiracy theories, why that happens. Actually, they're not conspiracy theories; they're real. But that's a whole nother. I actually did a whole other show on that stuff. But you mentioned a minute ago, you were talking about chemical exposures being part of it, and so. Two questions. One is, what chemical exposures do you see, or do you see as being the things that we need to eliminate to improve metabolism? And then with you talked about the hierarchy of needs and women's, libido and sex drive being up here. What's at the top for guys?
Okay. Well, let's start with the chemicals. So I do a lot of testing. I do toxin testing to see what the individual is exposed to. But for the most part, it's BPAs and glyphosate. So I tell people buy organic when you can, but still wash your food. And I've been saying that for a long time because I suspected that what they're spraying on the vegetables at the grocery store was maybe not the best water quality. I don't know, but still wash your vegetables even if they're organic. And so that has helped a lot because I'll actually track the values of getting the glyphosates out. But people forget about the BPAs, drinking out of plastic, warm plastic bottles, leaving them in your car, microwaving your food in plastic containers, lots of microplastic exposure. So even the to-go coffee cups that like Starbucks has, it's lined with a thin layer of plastic. When you pour hot coffee in there, that is melted, and then you're consuming that. That's very hard for your body to get rid of. And so if you get this backup, it builds up in your brain, all the functions shut down. And I explain it like being on a submarine and having a small leak. If something isn't right, you're exposed to a toxin that you cannot eliminate, it's all hands on deck. You're not going to be sitting in the poop deck playing cards. You're going to be looking for the leak. So that's what your brain does. You're not going to be working on procreation or hormone optimization. You're going to be working on getting rid of this toxin. I mean, that's the simple side of it. But those are the two biggest ones. And they're easy to eliminate. Eating organic, but making small changes and paying attention to, just pay attention to your exposure. I have a famous chef too, and he's all over the world, and he's talked about this a lot. And he said, I did this test on him, and his BPA was off the charts. It was the highest I'd seen. And I was like, well, what are you doing? He was like, well, I'm always drinking water. You told me to drink water, but I'm drinking out of a plastic water bottle, and I'm buying a case at a time. So it was sitting in the warehouse of the restaurants, and that's what he was drinking. And so we just switched to glass, and that was it. Just switched to glass bottles, and his numbers came back perfect. So in 4 months, it was such a radical change. But in that 4 months, because we took out the toxins, his liver enzymes got better, his energy got better, his brain fog got better. So it wasn't just hormonal. It was not just hormonal, not just metabolic. His entire system was flushed out of those toxins. So, you asked about what's at the tippy top for men. In my opinion, validation. Validation for the effort that you're putting into your workouts, validation for so when somebody walks up and they're like, and I know you experienced this because you and I had this conversation, I was like, oh, look at those muscles. You've gained muscle. And the look on your face was like, yeah, I've been at the gym. I've been doing this. I've been eating well. You've been putting the effort in, and that's your reward, is when everyone else notices. That's what I find most common. Foundational needs you need that intimacy. You need the support. As a man, you need to feel, in charge of your relationship. And that's normal and natural. And that's in fact biblical too. But at the tippy top is hearing someone else validate all the effort that you're doing, everything that you're doing to make your life exactly what you want it to be. And when you carry a little extra muscle and you carry a little extra poise and that physique is there, no one else can do that for you. When you see someone that is, they have nice shoulders and they're lean, no one else did that for them. They had to go put the work in. And so it's validating. It feels good that I'm doing it and I'm getting the reward.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Yeah, the old joke that so you're essentially validating the old joke that men's needs are food, sex, and sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of the base of the pyramid for guys.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And just to clarify for people who aren't in this space or haven't done a lot of work, glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup.
Right.
So your weed killer in your yard is sprayed over all the vegetables that are grown, is sprayed on wheat that goes into bread in the United States. Now, in Europe, they don't allow that stuff, but in America, the Roundup is sprayed on wheat at the very end of the growing cycle to keep it from getting rotten if it rains too much. It'll ruin that. Too much rain ruins the wheat crop, And so they spray Roundup on all the wheat as it's mature before it's harvested. And then that Roundup ends up in your bread, in your English muffins, and your cereal, everything.
And other vegetables. There's several, pesticides, but that's probably the most common one that I see when I do the testing, when I do the urine testing.
Yeah. So how do people eliminate or do their best to eliminate glyphosates from their diet?
Wash your foods. I'm still a huge fan of fruits and veggies. You definitely need them. You need all the vitamins, minerals, and fibers and everything that they offer, but wash them. So when I try to buy organic, sometimes it's just not available, and I needed certain foods. So when I bring them home, I soak them in baking soda, and the baking soda breaks down the glyphosates, and I just wash them really well. Um, that's my biggest hack. I mean, there are products that you can buy, and I bought all the expensive, you know, veggie soaks and things like that. And they're, yes, they work, and yes, they're gimmicky. But if you look at the main ingredients, it's baking soda, and you can do baking soda and a little bit of vinegar, and it just kills all the germs on the outside too. And it doesn't take much, a couple of minutes of a soak, rinse it out. I just use a colander and wash it out, dry it. And then I store my fruits in glass jars in the refrigerator to keep mold from growing on it. So that's another, hack that you can do. Now, if you think you've been exposed to something or this is not a habit that you have, I tell people to make sure your detox pathways are open. So you want to make sure that you're pooping every day, removing toxins, removing cellular waste, peeing regularly. So when people say, "Oh, I only pee once or twice a day," and I'm like, "How much water are you drinking? Your kidneys are you need more. You need to be peeing regularly." And sweat. We eliminate our toxins by peeing them out, pooping them out, and sweating them out. So I have people that are like, "Oh, I don't break a sweat." Find a sauna. And we're in Texas, so just go
You
outside.
don't have to worry about it.
So just sweat. And we know, studying this, it's fun now because the studies are coming out to support a lot of the functional medicine things that we've been saying. Hey, if you're sweating at least 3 days a week, you have a 40% reduction in cardiovascular disease. Why is that? It's not because sweat is leaving your pores. It's because the toxins and the inflammation is leaving. It's less that your body has to fight against. Then you can fight against disease. You can fight against infections. You have more attention. And I give the visual of like a conductor and trying to get all the instruments to play and everything's so excited. Well, you have instruments that are playing the wrong tune. It's going to be very distracting for that conductor. So if you're eliminating your pathways and you're taking out everything that doesn't belong, there are no extra players in the symphony. It's a much smoother detox process.
That's great advice. That's great advice. I want to talk. We talked a little bit about perimenopause and signs and symptoms and things like that. Just for the listener that is in their 30s and 40s or 50s and is kind of in that phase of life, what symptoms do you see in that age group of women?
Most commonly, it's fatigue. We have I think the running total right now is there's a total of 44 symptoms and counting of perimenopause. So it can be vague from itchy ears to thinning hair. It can be wild and not know that that's what it's related to. But the most common, I'm not sleeping very well. I've lost all libido. I'm losing muscle and gaining belly fat. And so that's usually when I get, a heads up or, hey, I think there's something wrong. I've been in situations and I've been around friends and I'm like, I can physically tell that you are shifting. I've known you for a long time. I've known this is not like your personality. They're extra grumpy. Like, you see a personality shift, something's going on. It may not be hormones, but it's worth a look, especially if you have any other supporting symptoms. What I get a little in my feels about is when women go to the gynecologist and they're like, yeah, I just don't feel good. My labs are normal. Here's an antidepressant. And it's not depression. And now we're going to dam up, we're going to give an SSRI, we're going to dam up the serotonin that's going to affect your sleep, it's going to affect your mood, but it's not curative. That's not the issue. If you didn't have those symptoms before, what was your catalyst? What changed? Sometimes it's life stressors. I moved to a different place. I started a new job. I'm not sleeping in this environment, going through something personal. Sure, those are all temporary. But if that's not what's contributing to it, it's probably hormonal. Let's take a look. Let's see how we can support your hormones. And this is so disturbing. Most of the time, it starts with a very low vitamin D. Very low vitamin D is your catalyst. That's actually what started the cascade of hormonal changes. So sometimes I'm not even giving you hormones. I'm giving you vitamin D, B vitamins, magnesium. I'm telling you to turn off the blue light, go to bed at a regular time, get some exercise, eat real food. That was another thing. We just came back from DC with our eat real food. And that is the formula. You're still going to have some hormonal changes that happen with age, and that's natural. But if you're doing all of those other things to support your hormones, you're less likely to need it at an earlier age.
What about, because I ask these questions of patients that are in the office when we start talking about just overall wellness, and patients will tell me, they'll say, well, I went to the gynecologist and my hormone levels are normal.
Mhm.
Are they really normal?
Right. Are they normal? Are they optimal? And I say it lovingly. When I hear that, I'm like, okay, well, that number is irrelevant. How are you feeling? Are you getting enough sleep? What symptoms and what changes have you noticed? And it takes 5 minutes of a conversation, and women will tell you, like, this is not right. And it might not be, hey, you're still making some progesterone, but you're still having low progesterone symptoms. I'm going to give you some pregnenolone. It's a supplement. We're going to help support your progesterone so you're not having these sawtooth spikes throughout the week. And another thing people fail to remember is that we are supposed to have natural undulations in our hormones. And when they want to do synthetic medications to get the same number every single time, every single day, no changes, that's not natural. So we do it even in our voice, in our communication. We go to concerts. We have different fluctuations of sound, different fluctuations of environments. We have those fluctuations in our hormones. So there should be some natural undulations. Timing is everything too. So I like to check your hormones at a peak, day 21, so I know exactly how they are at the highest point. And at the highest point, where you're supposed to be in that part of your cycle, if they're not great, they're not great 3 other days of the week, 3 other weeks of the month. So that kind of gives me a general starting point. I like to look at ratios too. You should have a good balance there. But at the end of the day, if symptoms are there, I'm not going to put you in a box and say, and I use this with women and testosterone, because testosterone can come back and it's pretty close in the normal range, maybe close to optimal. And I have women that are like, I've been exercising. I can't gain muscle. I'm eating protein. I am doing this and this and this. And I give them a little bit of testosterone, just a little bit. And it's wildly improved. And their bodies were making more their whole adult life. I just didn't know that because I didn't meet them until they were at the point of it being low for them. So sometimes I still treat outside of the normal versus optimal range, and I just treat the patient. Sometimes, we had to have this conversation with Amanda, and it's hard. I'll go to the gym and I'll see these women just pumping away. And we had moved, and I started this gym for just a month in between, moving into the house we're in right now. And every morning I go the same routine, and I see these same 2 ladies just pumping it away on the gym. And one of them says to the other, "We've been doing this for 6 months. Have you lost any weight yet?" And there was a knife in my heart. I'm like, these women are, the whole time I was lifting weights, they're just pumping it away on the cardio. And I on my whole heart, I wanted to say, turn down the cardio and do some weight training. You're stressing your cortisol levels out so much. And that was the other thing, like, coffee and pre-workout and all these things that stress your adrenals, stress your cortisol, that will shift your metabolism too. That all happens exponentially worse when you're in the perimenopause phase. I call it the zone of chaos. It's just chaotic. You're supposed to be, I also call it the Jeremy Bearimy phase, like if your hormones are looping all over the place. Cortisol wrecks everything. It is not balanced. Another silly analogy I tell people, if you're at a really nice restaurant and you have a toddler that really wanted that yellow sippy cup, but they didn't have it. You only had the green one that was clean. And if you've been a parent, you've been in that situation where you're in absolute panic. Please don't scream right now. And that's what your cortisol does. I'm going to let you know I am unhappy, and we are going to slow metabolism down because I didn't get my way. There's a panic, it's a very protective mechanism. That's what your body should do. But if you're constantly asking it to go into this protective mode to store, you're not going to be able to repair. You're not going to lose weight. You're not going to maintain that muscle. You're going to be in a state of survival. And so when I tell people after 35 or 37, I always ask, what kind of exercise are you doing? Like, okay, let's turn down cardio a little bit. Let's build up some resistance training. The weight training helps preserve bone and muscle. And I don't do as much for the men. You're not as responsive to the cortisol spikes that women are with that, because we have, one more hormone that we have to pay attention to. So it's not as severe, but I've seen it. I've had people just change their CrossFit routines and have wildly different outcomes, just toning it down a little bit. The other thing too is, this is important. You have to give your body a chance to rest. If you're pumping it at the gym 7 days a week, you don't give your body a chance to rest and repair. If you're shifting a little bit of cardio, a little bit of weight training, adding different body parts, giving your body a chance to repair and recover, you're going to have a significantly different outcome versus someone who's just pounding it every single day. So that's huge too. People feel obligated. I go every day, and that's back to the validation side. I go every day and I put everything into it, and I'm not getting the results that I want. Well, why? What are you doing? Let's time it. How's your meal? How's your stress? How's your sleep? Getting back to the root cause of why it's not shifting the way. And if all those things are in line, look at hormones. And it's not just estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. It's thyroid, it's DHEA, it's cortisol, insulin resistance. Those are all key players in that beautiful symphony and that three-legged stool balance.
So cardio, especially for women, cardio in your 30s, 40s, and beyond isn't all it's cracked up to be.
It's important, but it's not as important. It's not all you need to maintain. And people feel like, oh, I'm going to lose some belly fat, I'm going to do more cardio. And I'm like, no, do more resistance training. And I had to learn that firsthand. My trainer, I've been an athlete my entire life. I started competing when I was 15 years old. So I know how to work out. I know how to train. I've had a nutritionist forever. When in my 40s, I have a trainer, and he's like, okay, well, we're going to shift today, and we're not going to do 30 minutes of cardio. We're going to do 8 minutes of cardio. And I was so offended. I was like, well, I like to do my routine. I like to warm up first. And he was like, we're going to warm up differently starting today. And I was appalled. I'm like, well, I don't like this. And I've had my routine. I know better because I feel like I have some authority in that. And he's like, no. Happy birthday. Welcome to your 40s, where things are starting to change. And the fact that he knew that and I didn't recognize it was, I felt that. Like, you're calling me old. No, but he shifted it from 30, 35 minutes of cardio. I get 8 minutes of cardio. So cardio is still important, but it's not the end all be all. It's not as important for muscle maintenance, bone preservation. It's good for your heart health. It's good for stress. Sure, if you get a good quick run in there, get some sprints in, that helps with stress. You get a real up and down shift with your cortisol. But these people that come in and do 45 minutes of high intensity training at 55 years old and they want to know why they can't get rid of their belly fat, it's because they're doing too much cardio. That's the simple answer.
Interesting. Yeah, that flies in the face of what everybody thinks they know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And hearing it firsthand, I was like, what? Has always shifted, and I felt it. I didn't have any physique changes because I maintained my diet, I do all the things, but I felt better with my workouts. I didn't feel as sore. I felt like I was sleeping better. I could see it in my labs. I track everything, and I was like, I had to go back and tell him he was right, and I learned something. So it was very humbling to be on that side of it. It's been humbling to be on the on the other side of 45, where other things start to change, and you have to add in hormones that you can do all the right things, but it's still happening. Time is still coming for us. So what can we do to prepare? I want to be on the side of getting everything unchecked early.
Yeah. Ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure.
Exactly.
One of the things that we hear a lot in allopathic medicine, especially with female hormone replacement, is that you're going to get cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this in the past as well. Explain why that's not true.
Well, I'll tell people, I have analogies and jokes that I say. Hormones do not cause cancer. It's the loss of hormones that open up your body's defense. You open up those defense mechanisms, and cancer cells can replicate it. It starts at the mitochondria, and I can get a little deeper on that side of it. But hormones are not the cause. And when people tell me, well, I've had estrogen receptor positive xenoestrogens. Yes, your body's responsive to estrogen, and that's what fed it, but that's not what caused it. The cause was a broken mitochondrial communication. That mitochondria said, we're going to make this type of cell now. And I make a joke too. I'm like, if hormones really did cause cancer, we would have a whole bunch of 14-year-olds walking around with breast cancer, prostate cancer, uterine cancer, and we have teenagers, so we know those hormones are interesting right now. Also, during pregnancy.
Yes, they are.
During pregnancy, our hormones our progesterone is so high, it's almost unreachable on the numbers. We're growing another human being. And same thing with estrogen. Testosterone is through the roof. Those are very protective hormones. And I also bring it back to, when were you diagnosed? Most cancers are diagnosed after menopause, andropause. They're diagnosed later in life after 40. What happened between 35 and 40? What happened between 40 and 45? You had a hormonal shift, or that gateway was open for mitochondrial change. So what I tell people, we know Dr. Morgan Taylor proved that testosterone does not cause cancer. Like, I think 11 times. He did multiple studies on it. The original study that we held in the Bible, I remember this learning in school, like testosterone causes cancer. It was based on one study that had two patients. One of them was chemically castrated, and the other one already had cancer. So when they say 50% of patients got cancer from that one study, it was absolutely wrong. And Dr. Morgan Taylor said, no, I'm gonna get the word out. But so much damage was done in all of those years of widespread assumptions and acceptance that testosterone caused cancer. Same thing happened with the synthetic hormones, the Prem-Pro. It was the synthetic Premarin, the synthetic estrogens that, and I kind of give a visual of it, just poor receptor binding. So it leaves the opportunity for the cells to replicate unnaturally. But we're not. That was a chemical predisposition. And so that particular chemical was not natural. So the difference between bioidentical is the chemical structure, the molecular structure that your body created your whole life. Those are very protective. They don't cause cancer. In fact, we are now using hormones to treat cancer. So now they're finding breast cancer is very responsive to progesterone. The uterine cancer is very responsive to estrogen. Prostate cancer is very responsive to testosterone. And in some cases, men are being treated with estrogen if they have prostate cancer. And so we were kind of told, oh, PSA is elevated, stop the testosterone. And I'm like, whoa, let's stop the sugar. Because it's the sugar, it's the processed foods, it's the backed up elimination pathways, it's the chemicals that we were exposed to, all of it together. That's the cause of cancer. It has disrupted our hormones and opened the pathway to developing cancer without protection. That's my theory on it. I've got the studies and the evidence, and this is how I treat my patients. But it's not mainstream knowledge yet because we have our confirmation bias. I remember hearing it from my mom and my grandmother. My grandmother was a physician, and just, oh, that stuff is really bad for you, and or that's what bodybuilders need. And now I'm like, I can't even believe I thought that. I can't believe I actually had those conversations. And you give testosterone to an 80-year-old, and he's like, yeah. So it's fun.
So when you see female patients who have a breast cancer history, treated, and their hormone levels are suboptimal, they still get supplemental hormones if it's necessary.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yep. And we have a discussion, and I tell them, and it's to comfort, as I have some people that are like, I'll do the progesterone. I'm not going to do the estrogen. That's absolutely okay. You can do progesterone without estrogen. I don't do estrogen without progesterone because you definitely want that balance. But you can do progesterone, get the good sleep, the mood. You get all these wonderful benefits. The body actually really loves progesterone. Women, we just love our progesterone. In general, some people has a different pathway of breakdown. So the hormones aren't just hormones. We have to build them and then we have to break them down. And the metabolites of the hormones shift for different people. So it is very patient specific, but it's to comfort too. And most of the time I'm still giving testosterone, even if without the estrogen or progesterone. Most of the time I'm still giving the testosterone because going back to the muscle preservation, bone preservation. With and after cancer, there's so much muscle loss, the sarcopenia, just the weakness. It is very difficult for your body to maintain a state of health if you don't have the muscle to balance that out for you. And so I'll use testosterone just to gain the weight, gain the muscle, give that health back and that vitality. Then I'm also working on, what caused the cancer, what caused the breakdown in the first place? Was it diet, sugar? We know that sugar feeds cancer. So I put them on a really strict ketogenic diet for a while. I do a lot of water fasting, 3 or 5 day water fasting. I do Shilajit, the fulvic acid that helps. Then, just whatever supplements are needed. I like to do, if I'm dealing with someone with a history of cancer and had cancer treatment, I also like to do a micronutrient test because I want to be very targeted with what I'm replacing and not just giving them a blanket of, I can give you 20 supplements. I don't know if you need 20 supplements versus I'm giving you 11 supplements because you have significant deficiencies in these 11 things. And that's much more targeted for repair. And I'm trying to reset that homeostasis. Then you get hormones in check and everything is nice and balanced. You go back to that three-legged stool of metabolism is well managed and your body is protected.
That's exactly what I needed to hear. I want to be respectful of your time. One more question, and that this question may open Pandora's box. But I want to get to peptides, and we can do another one of these if you're willing on peptides themselves. But GLP1s, it seems like 80% of the people that walk through my door are on a GLP1. One of the detrimental side effects of GLP1s is that 20 to 40% of your weight loss is muscle loss. Mm-hmm. How do you balance the GLP1 and the metabolic improvements that you see with GLP1s with the muscle loss? And what advice do you have for people who are not doing anything other than a GLP1 to maintain their health or improve their health?
So there's two parts to it. You will have some muscle loss with weight loss because you're not carrying around that weight anymore. I do my GLP-1s very different. I microdose. And I got a little heat online because someone accused me of having to earn a GLP. And it's not what I meant when I said I focus on nutrition, diet. So diet and nutrition are very different, and resistance training. And so if you're doing those things and not getting your results, a GLP-1 might be needed. It can be very helpful for inflammation. And I have seen like rheumatoid arthritis reverse. I have seen so many autoimmune diseases shift into remission using a GLP-1 because it comes from the gut and you're restoring an imbalance in the gut. Now, when I'm meeting with someone and I'm going to prescribe it, I talk to them about eating real foods. I'm like, if it has a label that has more than the 1 or 2 ingredients in it, that's probably not real food. Move on to something else. And I give an example. I'm like, have a grass-fed steak, eat the baked potato, and have the broccoli. All of those are real food. That is a complete meal. That's what I mean by eat real food. Every meal should be single ingredient foods. And that helps a lot if we're focusing on protein and diet, because I'm going to try to reset the microbiome too. And I have people that want to do, big doses, lose weight quickly. And I'm like, I'm not willing to sacrifice the muscle. So I do have that conversation with them about, we're going to do this together. We're going to do it slowly. And I build up a little bit every week. And if they become symptomatic, we take it back down. I do DEXA scans on a lot of my patients. If I can get them to come into Texas, we do DEXA scans so we can measure that improvement. And then I can say, well, you may have lost 2 pounds of muscle, but now you're carrying around 50 pounds less of fat. So of course you're going to lose the muscle. And that's where people, I think, the online interpretation of what a GLP-1 can do, it's not meant to be quick weight loss. If you're getting those results that quickly, you're doing it wrong. And I say that lovingly. I want to preserve as much of your muscle as possible. I want you to lose weight. I want to correct the metabolism. But if you do it rapidly, then I feel like that's when you become dependent on that medication to maintain, because you haven't made the lifestyle changes to maintain that. You've had the body changes because of it, but you haven't made the lifestyle changes to maintain it. So the heat that I got was, she makes you earn your GLP-1. And, yeah, in a sense, I want you to have the best long-term outcome. I'm not doing this because I'm going to make a quick buck on seeing you once or twice, and then you're going to lose weight and I won't see you again. I plan on staying with you. I have patients for years and years, and I love that whole journey. I'm setting you up to see you when you're 56 and 66. And I want all of those health markers to maintain optimal. I want you to live your best life. But if we're doing something, a quick fix to hit a goal, but not actually getting a solid foundation of where you're going to land, we're going to miss the mark. And I could eventually change that long-term health outcome.
Yeah, I think that's great advice and a great way to look at it. Where can people learn more about what you do and learn more about Ways to Well in general?
Our website is waystowell.com, or you can follow us on Instagram. We post a lot of videos and things there too. We publish our studies and a lot of information on the JRE links on our website, waystowell.com. We try to keep that loaded up with, information. So when I make a statement, it's because I've got something to back it up. We've seen it, we've read it. I have my personal statistics that, I love when I see my patients and they're happy and I get these amazing videos, or I get a message on Instagram or something. It warms my heart, fuels my fire. But, I set out to change healthcare. I wanted to be the verb of healthcare because I want you as a patient to be the CEO of your health. I want you to be so well informed on what you eat, the decisions that you make. And that's why I say diet and nutrition are very different. Diet is anything that you're consuming, not just alcohol, but social media. The junk that you're exposed to, that affects your brain, that affects your health. All of those things together, if we're working together, I'm going to coach you on how to get to the most optimal version of yourself so that we can maintain that. And my motto is get well, stay well, live well. I want that to be forever for your health span.
And that's what healthcare should be, but unfortunately so often isn't.
Yeah.
So Danese, thank you so much for your time. I'd love to get you back on, talk more about peptides. I know that's a huge topic right now. Hopefully we can make that work. But thank you so much for this great information. I appreciate it. Everybody, if you've got any questions, you can DM me at drjasonhall.com. You can leave a comment in the YouTube video below. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.